You're a flop. You're a friendless nobody loser. Like, whatever. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm just gonna get into it. So this week I actually bought this because when my cousins were here, we did a lot of book shopping because one of my cousins had all these like different unique bookshops that she wanted to check out. And we actually went to the drama bookshop. So that's a bookshop that's all plays and like musicals and that kind of stuff. They had a few like celebrity memoirs, but you know, all in that vein of like plays, drama, acting, musicals, whatever. And we ran into Lin-Manuel Miranda at that bookstore. So just crazy fun time. We did a whole like bookstore tour, and I am in the process of reading my physical TBR, aka like reading every single book that I own that I bought with the intention to read. There's some books that are gifts or that are heirlooms that I have for sentimental value that I don't necessarily intend to read. Not to say that I never will, but like I'm not counting those. I'm counting the ones that I went into the store or I put it in my cart online and I bought it with the intention to read, and I haven't read it. So I was on a moratorium from buying books until I actually finished that TBR. But we did this whole wonderful book tour, and I actually saw books that I was interested in reading, and I was like, well, I want to get the full experience of like going to these stores, not just to look around, but actually to purchase, especially because just this book, I'm not usually like hopping on the train of like books that are like super current, especially right now because of the last 2 years I've been trying to like read my physical TBR, like read what I already have. So I've been reading some just the most random of books. So it's so fun to be reading like a more topical book. But yeah, I read The Bride by Hazelwood, and I really enjoyed it. Spoiler alert, gave it 5 stars. Not 5 stars. Whoa. I give it 4 stars. Hello. 5 stars is like a new fave, and I don't think this is a new fave, but this is definitely one that I would read again. So, and that is like really high recommendation. I would read it again, and I would recommend, but with a big caveat, right? And we'll get to that at the end. But I watched Destiny Sidwell. I don't think she did a separate video on it. I think it was like a monthly wrap up or something. Just discovered her channel. Really like her stuff. Like it's like very like a cozy, like comforting watch. I think BookTube in general gives that vibe, but I enjoy her stuff from what I've seen, you know. And she recently like spoke about this, and she was like, it was kind of slow and then insta lovey, and I was like, what happened? Okay, they're in love now. And she was saying the beginning was like too much focused on politics and spent a lot of time on politics. So like I'm paraphrasing. Like I think she gave it a 3 stars. So I try not to read reviews or see too many reviews before I go into a book. And if I do, I want to only look at the positive reviews if I know it's something that I'm interested in, right? Just to try and not color my mindset. But I wonder how I would have been had I gone into this like raw, because I did see Destiny's review, and then it kind of had me in this mindset of thinking that it was going to be slow in the beginning, and that maybe I wasn't going to like it when they finally were in love, because it would seem like too like instantaneous, because I don't love insta-lovey plot lines. Like it's not my favorite. It's not like one of my worst tropes. It's not something where I'm like, if it has insta-love, like I'm panning it. Like I don't feel that seriously about it. But I would disagree with that review. Like I'm not gonna lie. And again, not to target anyone, like really like her stuff and really enjoy her reviews. I think this one, it just my experience of it was different, and I think maybe I liked it more almost because I went in with like a slightly less positive view versus like a neutral view, which is what I typically try and have. So really enjoyed this. Yes, it's definitely world building. It's definitely politics. At the end, there's a reference or like kind of like a hint that maybe 2 side characters in this book will actually potentially have a romance. So I think it's going to be like one of those series where you only have one book with this couple, but you have like the next book in the series is like a different couple but in the same world. I'm sure there's a term for that. I don't know what it is. Anyway, so I think that's possibly what's happening here. I have not done any research, so I don't know if like Ali Hazelwood, I'm forgetting her name, like it's literally right there. I don't know if Ali has said if that's what her plan is, but that's like the hint that's given at the end, which I like because I enjoy the world. And as I was reading this book, I was like, I would like to know more about this world. And I see, in terms of like side characters and stuff like that, I see like plenty of room for her to like have other romances in this world, which I think is cool. So I'm excited to see what she does with it. I have never read any of her other books, and I just think like I'm not the big fan of women in STEM like focused books. Like when I'm reading romance for like, it's for entertainment. It's for, what's the word I'm looking for? Like to like leave the reality behind. You know what I mean? So I don't love books that focus too heavily on career, unless like it's straight up nonfiction or like a memoir, you know? Like I really loved Anna Kendrick's Scrappy Little Nobody, you know? And obviously like her career is acting, so it's more fun in people's eyes. But like at the end of the day, like I don't mind books that focus on that if that's more so the purpose. But when it comes to like romance, or when it comes to fantasy, when it comes to like thrillers, when it comes to all that kind of stuff, when we spend too much time with people in the workplace or people talking about what they do, I'm just typically like, ugh. So like her other stuff I just don't think is for me. Also there's been some like cringy lines that have been read out and I was just like, ugh, like whatever. I haven't been moved to read any of her other stuff, but I think like I'm gonna say this with no basis because I haven't read any of her other stuff, but I think paranormal romance is for her. Like I think that's her bag. Like this was great, and I really enjoyed the fact that she came in as a standalone novel, created her own world, and it wasn't too long. This book is like 399 pages. I think on Goodreads this is 410, but like the actual story part of it is 396 pages. So like to do the world building that she did, it had a good plot, I feel like, and also still have time for the romance. I think it was good. Like I think the side characters, like some of them were like underdeveloped, but I also think like if it ends up being one of those like each book is a different couple but it's in the same world, if they end up doing that, then there'll be plenty of time to develop those characters. But I think she did a really good job, and I think paranormal romance is like her bag. Like I want to see more from her. I will read any paranormal romance she's writing going forward, like genuinely. That's where I'm at with her. So really excited, glad to finally support, glad to finally even see what her writing style is, because for me, like whenever people are popular, sometimes I'm curious, but I just don't want to force myself to read a book that just isn't of no interest to me just to then complain, especially when I know people really are like stands for certain authors, because I'm like, I don't want to be dragged for filth when it's like I intentionally read something that I didn't think I was gonna like, you know what I mean? So and that's like a reference of like me reading and reviewing it. Obviously if you're just like saying it in real life, it's like whatever, but I'm not wasting my time reading stuff that it's not really calling to me if I'm not actually gonna like use it for review purposes. But I read this thinking I was really gonna like it. But yeah, for me, like Ali Hazelwood, like I've just never been interested in anything that she's published until this, and I'm so glad that she did, and I want more. That's the reality, right? But I would say, yeah, there's definitely like politics. There's a lot of time spent on the politics in the beginning and throughout, but I think it's like it's part of the plot. It's not too clunky. It doesn't bore me. There is reference to like their careers, like the main love interest studied architecture. It's a paranormal romance, so he's a werewolf, and she's a vampire, but vampire spelled with a Y, whatever. A la Vampire Academy. No, is that how they? I think they spell it with a Y. Basically, he's aware. She's a vampire. He studied architecture. She did computer science. They do spend time on like the career aspect, but it's very negligible. Like it's not up to what I assume she has going on in other books based on the reviews that I've watched. So it was like good balance to me of stuff that can be boring to me. The political aspect, the career aspect, those can be boring to me when it comes to romances, and when it comes to fantasy, when it comes to like these books that I'm really trying to like lose myself in. You know what I mean? I don't want to think about the machinations of like basically stuff that I could just, turn on the news if I want. You know what I mean? It's like, this is my entertainment. But I think she definitely like strode that line very well. And I didn't feel like it was too much. And I also did feel like this was a slow burn. I didn't feel shocked at any point when their relationship wasn't advancing. Like, I think it was like a solid pace. And I feel good about that because I've read slow burns almost that are too slow to where the couple themselves get like 2 seconds together in the book because the slow burn is so slow. I love a slow burn, but it can have diminishing returns. So I don't worship at the altar of slow burns. You know what I mean? In terms of like good pairings. But I feel like main characters they felt real, they felt authentic, and I saw why they worked together. There was the mate element because there's werewolves and stuff like that. And I think sometimes when there's like this built-in of like, oh, someone's mate or whatever, or when there's like these supernatural elements, it can kind of leave room for an author not to have to prove the romance and not to have to prove why should these people to be together. And I feel like throughout the book, there was a case being made for why these two are solid individuals, deserve love, and work with each other well. So yeah, I feel good about it. Like, I really enjoyed it. I would definitely reread. There was cute moments, there was spicy moments. Apparently when it comes to like the spicy moments, it was something to do with like the Omegaverse. Like, someone mentioned that, and I googled it one time. That's not really like my reading forte. But be warned that like the spicy scenes have like more unorthodox stuff. If you're not like a paranormal romance person, if like, you're not reading like the Ice Planet Barbarians of the world, like whatever, you might be like, this is interesting, and maybe even like weird or gross to you. I personally am someone who like likes a closed door romance. Like, I don't like too much detail where all that's concerned, because that's just, I'm reading for the romance. I can't say that like, I can't say much about it just because like it's typically something that I skip. This time I wasn't like cringed out by what I read, so I'll say that. Whereas like other books, I'm just like, oh, this is like nails on a chalkboard, can't do it. It wasn't the worst thing, and it wasn't too much for me, because I think certain books overdo it with the spicy scenes, especially as someone who skips. Then you're reading the book like half time, you know what I mean? Because you're skipping so much. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, like whatever, like it's fine, I get it. We're all grown women or grown people, like do with your time what you will. It's just not what I enjoy as much. You know what I'm saying? That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for plot. I'm looking for romance. I'm looking for why should these people be together, right? So I feel like with all that being said, this was a win for me. Like, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm just having a good reading year so far, which I'm really excited about. I was realizing that like I have a lot more like I feel like I have a lot more books that I'm rating highly lately, and there's definitely been some years, and we have that, we're just like picking duds or whatever. But I feel like I really enjoy when I have like a lot of 4 stars, and I feel like that's happening more so in the last few years than in the past, where I feel like I was just reading books that were like, some of them were so bad I was like angry. I read Beautiful Disaster. That book was so horrendous, I thought I was losing it. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. It was like, I don't want to knock authors, because at the end of the day, you wrote a novel, and that's something that like is hard and takes a lot of work, and people put a lot of heart into it. So I hate to say something was bad, but that book was that was rough. Okay, I felt I was having a mental breakdown when I was reading it because it was so poorly written. I was like, am I missing something? Like, what's happening here? You know? So like, I'm just enjoying this reading year so far, and this was like really good. I'm about to read the Twisted, what is it? Twisted Love, Twisted Hate, Twisted Lies. That whole series. I'm super excited for that one. I'm also reading Get a Life, Chloe Brownstein. So like, I feel like I have some like hitters that I feel like are going to be really good. So I'm so excited. Anyway, that's the point. All right, so basically it's 4 stars. I think it's a little bit of a slower beginning. Definitely a lot to do with like plot and politics and world building. So if you don't love that, then it might be a bit slow for you for like 60% of this book. If you're looking for a lot of spicy scenes, also probably not the book for you. Yeah, I think that's kind of it for like the non-spoilery stuff. But yeah, so if you haven't read it and you don't want to be spoiled, now would be your time to like click off. I don't have too much to say on the spoiler end. And this is another like non-spoilery thing. Some of the like references or like choice of slang or like when how like our main character Misery our main character's name is Misery. Misery, she referenced like her friend Serena, and they were like, you know, referring to each other like certain ways, and like it just kind of took me out. Like I know that girls talk like that, and like like it's definitely a thing that I'm quite familiar with, and it's real. But something about it in a book, especially with the other world building, like it just didn't fit sometimes, and it felt jarring. Or just like certain slang or certain references that kind of slid in there, especially when it was like the character doesn't normally talk like this, and then they were sliding it in. It's like the person who like doesn't curse that tries to curse, or the person who doesn't use slang that tries to use slang. It's like sometimes when your parents learn slang and they're like saying certain words, and you're like, no. It's like nails on a chalkboard. You feel me? So like those were moments where I was like, ooh, like let me close the book right quick. Like it was just giving me like it was giving me a little bit of a, you know, like just little cringe moments. But that's like so minor. Like I wouldn't even say it was a critique per se. Yeah. Because I'm not trying to nitpick this book. I really enjoyed this book. So, but I just mentioned it because I was like, oh, like it just felt a little bit like tone. Like sometimes the tone just wasn't suited for those kind of like jokes or slang or references or cursing or whatever it was. Like it just sometimes it didn't all go together. In particular, in a way that a certain character spoke, right? But it's okay. It's fine. No, not like a big critique. It was more of just like certain moments of being like, that was a little like off or awkward, and that's like kind of it. That's the end of it all. Okay. My only actual genuine gripe with this book is the whole, and this is spoiler territory, the whole mate scenario where Misery is our main guy, Lo's mate. And he lies about that. He knows that Misery is his mate from the beginning. There's like, it's nebulous. Like he mentions that he has, or she asks him if he had a mate, and he's like, yeah. But like, kind of, it's heavily implied that it's no, is it implied that it's unrequited? I think it is implied that it's unrequited, but whatever. Point being, through a series of like valid miscommunications, in a sense of like, there was misinformation put out there for reasons, like in the plot. So like it's not like, oh, she assumed per se, like she was told that someone else was his mate and she didn't meet the person, but she knew of them, whatever. And then he heavily implied that his mateship, like whoever he was mates with, it was like unrequited. And so like all this together, she like doesn't realize that like she's his mate. And then at a certain point it starts clicking to her that she's actually his mate. And that's after she meets the girl that she thinks is Lowe's mate and realizes there's no like vibe, there's no connectivity there. And then she realizes like, okay, wait a minute. So if his mate, like whatever, she starts like running it back in her mind, and she's like, okay, like, so I think I'm actually his mate, which I appreciate, because I hate in books and movies and stuff where like people are so slow up in the uptake, like the signs are all there and they cannot put two and two together to save their freaking life. That irritates me to no end. That's not what we're getting here at all. Thank the Lord. Okay? So she does put two and two together, but then Lo lies. He's like, oh, like, I think that you're reading too much into this, because at this point they're like hooking up or whatever, and it's like, oh, they're getting all hot and bothered and stuff like that. And he's like, I think you've misheard the situation. Like, we're having a good time, but like, you're not my mate. Like, you're dragging it. And I was like, oh, and then he uses like certain vulnerabilities against her, and it was kind of savage. Like, because I feel like, I don't know, it was one of those most savage moments where like the guy's like pushing the girl away. And I, first of all, I wish they would have let that sit, because I wish they had let it sit and that he had also had to grovel, because that was hard. That was some rough stuff, the way that he really was like, you're a flop, you're a friendless nobody loser, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he really dragged her for filth in like that whole pushing her away moment and using her like deepest insecurities and like most painful elements of her life against her to push her away. Like, he ate her up, okay? Like, it was crazy. I was like, oh dang, like, that's painful. So in my opinion, he should have had to grovel. He really didn't actually have to grovel for them to get back together. I mean, he did, like, I don't know, there was like near-death experiences and stuff like that. So I get it, but yeah, I wish they would have let that sit, because it's like he lies and says that she's not his mate. The reason for why he lies, aka not wanting her to feel beholden to him, just because she's his mate, he doesn't want her to feel like obligated to be with him, and that's the reason why he lied. I feel like it was a dumb reason. Give us a better reason, please and thank you, for him to actually lie about that. Like, he could have said, like, as pack leader, as alpha, like, I can't give myself to her fully because like I always have to like worry about the pack, or you know, I have to make sacrifices, or whoever I love is always at risk because, you know, people will try to get to them to get to me. It's dangerous. Like, there were so many other reasons, and this is literally me thinking of reasons off the top of my head. And like, not to knock her writing, because I think she did a really good job with the story, but I just wish that the reason was more valid. The whole idea of like, I don't want you to feel beholden to me because this mythical mate thing makes you feel like you have to love me back and you have to be with me. That's the reason why you're gonna lie and say that she's not your mate, and also not just say that she's not your mate, but like really twist the knife. It just didn't make sense. Like, I wish that there was a different reason why, in my opinion. And I think that's very much an opinion-based thing. I think there's plenty of people who are gonna read it and not have a problem, but like, it bothered me. I was like, this is a dumb reason, and he's going really far for such a dumb reason, right? And then this lie lasts for 2 seconds, because then she immediately gets like kidnapped, and then the reason why she gets kidnapped is because they know she's his mate. So then he has to admit that he lied and that she actually is his mate, and that he would do anything for her because she's being used as like leverage against him. And she's like, like, I'm not his mate, so you flopped. And they're like, no, sweetheart, you are his mate. What are you talking about? Like, it was just so cringe, because it was like, they didn't let the lie sit for 2 seconds, bro. The lie sat for like 10 pages. You feel me? Like, let the lie sit. I wish it would have been days or weeks of her believing that she wasn't his mate. And I wish there was some more disbelief on her end when the truth actually came out. And I wish also that he had groveled. Yeah. Instead of her like going to him. I don't know. That's fine, because like I said, at the end of the day, he needed to know that like she loved him because she loved him, and not because she felt obligated to love him because of the mate thing and like the devotion. And this idea that like, because I'm totally devoted to you and because you feel like I would be miserable if you didn't return my affection, like I don't want you to feel obligated. So I do understand that element. Um and I think the way that I would have liked it to go down is for him to lie about the mate thing. If he was gonna lie about the mate thing, if that plot point had to be in there, that he had a better reason for it. Like trying to protect her. And then that lie would have sat for a few weeks. Then the kidnapping and all that stuff would have happened. And then when they survived it, she's like, listen, I don't understand why you lied to me. But at the end of the day, I loved you no matter what. Like, even when I thought that someone else was your mate and that I thought that I would never be able to have all of you and all of your devotion, I still loved you and I still wanted you regardless, like whatever little scrap you could give to me. But at the end of the day, when you threw my past and my vulnerabilities back in my face, like, I don't know if I can trust you. And just leave it there and then have him grovel, right? I think that would have been my preferred way of things to resolve. But at the end of the day, they ended up together. They were cute. This is not my novel, so I don't need to like rewrite the whole freaking ending. But that's just like a little nitpicks of like what I would have changed. But overall, I think this is a really, really enjoyable read. The only other thing is that they kind of yada yada the fight scene. And listen, like I don't know that she's written any other books which would have had a fight scene, and I think those are notoriously hard to write. And there's so many times where I'm reading a fight scene and I'm like, I'm not entirely sure what's going on. So like she's so real for just skipping it. She's so real for just skipping it. But it also gave me a little bit like Breaking Dawn core, where like there should be a fight, but then there isn't one. And I love how like the actual movie retconned that, you know? It did feel a little bit like a short change of like, this is paranormal. Like, give us some like werewolves ripping vampires to shreds. You feel me? Because the rivalry between the two species have like, you know, it was up this whole book. They were mentioning it this whole book, and then when it was time for them to like actually fight, they got away. They got away. Anyway, that's it. I really did enjoy this book. I reiterate, 4 stars. I feel like I keep saying like, giving my little critique, but being like, but I loved it. And it's like, I'm gonna keep it 100% with you, right? Like, I think writing a novel is really hard, right? And I think people put a lot of heart into it. And I also think like I've seen authors online take these kind of reviews super personal. Not that anyone was like, not that Allie's gonna see this random review, but I just don't want to like, I guess, put too much negativity out there. But I also want to share my thoughts on books because that's like part of what this channel is for. So I'm trying to be measured, right? I'm trying to be measured. I'm trying to have fun. I don't want to be like contributing to what I feel like is already an overwhelmingly negative internet space right now. So that's why I'm just like so like, you know, trying to deal with things gingerly. But it is what it is. I have so much else that I need to be doing with my evening, so I need to be done. Like, I'm sure I've been filming for like 30-40 minutes at this point, which means it's gonna take a million years to edit. So I'm gonna have to go. Catch you on the flip side.